Nothing has brought me greater joy than watching the Walt Disney Company absolutely panic over the last few weeks. They're mad at South Park because they're making fun of their woke ideologies, constantly race swapping or religion swapping everything in their movies.
It's a brand new exclusive event with all your favorite South Park characters.
I had explosive diarrhea all night. Dude, school is going to be so awesome today.
Oh, hamburgers.
I like big boobs.
How does this even make any sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think the problem is you.
To no one's surprise, South Park has decided to come for Disney's woke agenda by parodying what they're trying to do with Rachel Zegler's Snow White and many other Disney projects. This was very expected from South Park, as this isn't the first time they've pulled something like this against Disney. However, Rachel Zegler seems to be absolutely furious with their and everyone else's mocking. South Park has decided to air an episode titled Into the Panderverse, where they've gender and race swapped Cartman, Stan, Butters, and Kenny for adult women of color in a very satirical representation of what Disney is trying to do with many of its upcoming movies. Disney has gotten plenty of backlash recently because of Rachel Zegler taking on the role of Snow White when she's Latina, and for changing the story to make it look more feminist and empowering, all while changing incredibly important details of the original story, which is what made Snow White what it was. According to Rachel Zegler, the movie has removed all traces of romance between her and the prince, and she's even teased that the prince might as well be removed from the story in what some fans believe to be an incredibly disrespectful interview.
Prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Rachel Zegler's attitude has been very much criticized by a lot of people since she seems extremely ungrateful and entitled about the role.
Snacks all over the set that are apple flavored. And that hurts my feelings.
I was gonna say,
it's like they don't know what happens to me. There's gonna be so many stories that come from the set about how difficult I am to work with simply because I don't want apples. In a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is.
So that is Rachel Zegler. She is casted as Snow White in the upcoming new movie. And ever since she has been casted, she has been problematic from the start. Every single interview that she does, her tone of voice is very rude and she comes off very rude. The movie right now has such bad publicity because of her and her interviews.
And fans especially hate her because of the way she's been making it sound like the original Snow White story was horrible. And because she thinks that this new version, that almost doesn't even sound like Snow White, is the only right way to tell the story. Disney has not only completely changed the 7 dwarfs that are literally in the original title, but they also removed the prince's importance by seemingly not having him and Snow White fall in love. And not only that, but the studio has also been getting a lot of backlash for casting a Latina actress as Snow White, when the original character was named for her skin as white as snow. This connection is now impossible to draw in this new movie, and her name no longer makes any sense because of the choice to make Snow White Latina. This questionable choice is something that was done in The Little Mermaid earlier this year as well, and that movie similarly received a whole lot of backlash for unnecessarily changing her race. However, while the majority of the backlash from The Little Mermaid came from changing her race, the same can't be said for Snow White, as it has many other problems that fans are furious about. The Little Mermaid was able to keep a lot of its original elements that made the story wonderful, and the adaptation was almost a direct copy. However, with all the changes made in Snow White to seemingly pander to woke audiences, have made this new movie almost unrecognizable. This is why Comedy Central stepped in to prove a point by making a special South Park episode where they've race and gender swapped the main characters, and they're showing exactly how ridiculous it is by really playing up the satire of it. Comedy Central is very well known for its jabs at various studios for their wokeness, and even both left and right-wing political ideologies, so no one is really safe. However, this isn't the first time that South Park has made Disney their target. And while their new panderverse special is meant to mock every studio that caters to woke audiences, it seems like it's especially aimed at Disney because of Snow White and Rachel Zegler, along with the studio's earlier release of The Little Mermaid. The main reason for the episode's theme is to show that simply changing ethnicity and gender doesn't count as real diversity, especially in a pre-existing story like South Park or Snow White, since the story was never about exploring ethnically diverse characters, and there's nothing for viewers to relate to because of it. It's also supposed to show exactly how one-dimensional some of these changes feel, since it just ends up with the studios checking a diversity checkbox instead of making it a real part of the story. It also especially mocks the choice to cast Rachel Zegler for Snow White, since Disney seems to care more about how the diversity looks on paper than making sure that it adds to the story. And Rachel's attitude to the story certainly doesn't help their cause, since it puts off a lot of fans from wanting to celebrate her casting. It's exactly what's often described as pandering, and why the episode has gotten the title Into the Panderverse. It shows that casting a Latina actress for Snow White is more of a marketing gimmick and is pandering to a certain audience in order to score bonus points. And South Park aims to expose how this sort of pandering is not only bad for Rachel, who's now being exposed and ridiculed, but also very disrespectful for true fans of the original story who have now lost all interest. This is not the first time the creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker have worked with Paramount to create satire episodes based on Disney's choices either. Back in 2022, they came out with The Streaming Wars and The Streaming Wars Part 2, which was actually an extremely controversial episode at the time. However, it looks like they're back yet again, as they're not afraid to step on anyone's toes, especially Disney's. Disney is seemingly furious with the studio for doing this to them again, after initially mocking them for Star Wars in the past. And it's even rumored that they're attempting to contact the studio to stop them from airing similar episodes, as it's seen as a direct threat to their business model. Disney has said many times that they aim to make more diverse stories, and that apparently involves remaking old favorites by race-swapping characters that didn't need to be instead of making new original stories, which can bring better stories to the table that actually seem thought out and meaningful for the represented groups. South Park creator Bob Iger and the Disney board are allegedly attempting to settle things in a meeting in order to make sure that this doesn't hurt Disney too much and that South Park stops mocking them in the future, as it's starting to become a direct threat against their model. In the past, South Park has not only mocked Star Wars, which Disney acquired in recent years, but it's even gone after the beloved cartoon figure Mickey Mouse, which Disney saw as incredibly disrespectful. However, this new episode concerning Disney's pandering might just be their most controversial release yet, as it's not only going after Disney, but it's also coming from many other studios that support similar things, and even fans who believe there's nothing wrong with changing such big parts of existing stories. It's supposed to show exactly how wrong it feels to have something so familiar be changed so much, while still using the original name. Removing the love story from Snow White is not only disrespectful to the original creator of the story and everyone who worked on it, but it also feels like a cheap out, since they could have worked to make the love story better and more thought out instead of removing it fully. There's nothing wrong with love, and it's not something that should be hidden away. Fans believe that Snow White can still be a powerful force to be reckoned with, while also having her prince by her side, and it could have been a truly beautiful sequence to have in the movie, instead of completely removing the prince from her life and rewriting her to be a warrior that only cares about her country. There's very little for viewers to relate to in this new adaptation, which is why it feels like Disney is trying to push away its loyal fan base in order to cater to woke minds, especially when the option to make an entirely new movie with a new story is right there. The criticism especially falls on Rachel Zegler, since she's been a huge advocate for these changes, and she's basically been the #1 supporter of changing the story, as she believes it's incredibly outdated.
Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
It feels especially wrong since Rachel was never even a fan of Snow White, and it's something she made very clear as she didn't even try to censor herself in an interview, where she explained exactly how much she hated the story. What are your thoughts what South Park is doing to Disney and Rachel Zegler? Let me know down below, and don't forget to check out this next video.